Well, this for me just says so much.
There you are.
Yeah,
there you are.
It's, first of all, the setting. It's a very precise moment in the day. The day has just broken. It's dawn. And we know from the text that Mary has been weeping alone, believing that the greatest love of her life has been killed, that he's dead and there's no hope for her. And she sees a man who she believes to be a gardener. And that one verse in the New Testament is the excuse for so many artists to actually give the resurrected Christ a hoe, as if he's deliberately trying to trick her into thinking, hey, I'm just a gardener. And then she has that moment of recognition. And she puts her hand up, and memorably he says, Noli me tangere, do not touch me. And then he goes on to say, go and say what you've seen. Mary is the first person who is charged with this huge responsibility of spreading to the world the news of the most important miracle in the Christian faith, the resurrection of Christ. And Christ has got such an elegant turn in his body as he just slightly recoils to avoid her touch. And her expression in her face, too, is one of absolute poignancy and extraordinary delicacy. What's so interesting, Jenny, about this picture is that we've been able to see below the surface the X-rays and infrareds, which tell us that originally Titian had got Christ's body in a different pose.
Exactly, and that just it helps us know, what is the process that Titian's doing in creating this, and the idea that he had to get that pose just right, and he actually didn't have Christ leaning away quite so much, and he actually even had a nice gardener's hat on Christ, which he clearly thought that costume was a little bit too much, so he painted that out. But I love the way ultimately he decided to compose the figure of Christ in that the body is curving away, as you see, but actually it's also inclining towards Mary. So this both sort of double moving away and coming towards. And it's echoed very beautifully in the tree behind him as well. So there's something about the landscape itself being aware of this important moment. And you'll see similarly the bushes just to the right of the tree echo Mary's own pose. So there's everything around this scene is sort of being bent and formed to suggest that it's aware that this moment's taking place.
What I love, or one of the many things I love about this picture, is the view of the buildings at the back, this little township, because you know that there are people there who are still in bed. And they're just waking up because dawn is breaking. And they've got no idea that this is happening just a few hundred yards away from their cozy bedrooms. You get this wonderful sense of warmth and life and humanity going on, unconcerned, unknowing, in that little township behind. And there's just one figure you can see on the path who looks as like someone getting up early to walk his dog, who just has maybe noticed that there is something happening over there in the distance.
Similarly, if you kind of trace your eyes over to the left-hand side of the painting, you'll see all the cattle and the sheep in the field. So it does give you that sense of the everyday continuing on. But much like we talked in the Velasquez, as soon as you start thinking about those supposed incidental details in the background, as soon as you see a sheep and Christ together, you think of Christ as the sacrificial lamb.
And it's the Good Shepherd, and Mary in her pose echoing the sheep.
Yes.
And this incredible sense of the shepherd knows his sheep, and that incredible loving care. And so you can also read that hoe has the double image also of a shepherd's crook, and that sense of the loving shepherd finding the lost sheep. And her white is echoing the sheep on the other side. And so the image is doubling. And of course, you also get this beautiful image that the root of the tree is Mary. And, we have this whole long biblical history of the root is out of Jesse and David to Jesus. And Titian just reroots the tree that is coming through Jesus, but the root is in Mary. And she becomes the rootedness of this new flowering, this new blossoming, this new dispensation. And she will be the person who, of course, to whom the resurrection is shown, whose word will be the first word. And it's a beautiful image also of her humility. And I think that we think that she wants to touch him. Is it sexual? But of course that her other hand is gripping the pot of the spices, which takes us all the way back to her washing his feet with her hair, and takes us back to her embalming the body with spice. And she's gripping that. It's not that it's somewhere around. It's one hand is really gripping that. And so you get this incredible coming up through that. And the roots are her open hand. And then, as you said, this beautiful, gentle gesture, which Colin, the gorgeousness of how gentle the incline is away. And at the same time, that there's so much action there with all of the cloth. And the cloth is just, is so animated at that very moment. But meanwhile, the whole body itself is in such repose. It's kind of...
But you mentioned the white, and Titian, as one of the greatest handlers of pigment that there has ever been, when you look at that white, you can see that is one particular white.
Yes.
This is another white.
The blue.
This is another white. They're colours we would all describe as white, but they are all subtly different.
Transformed.
And they all play very different roles. And just as you were describing, Peter, the shimmering nature of that one drapery that Christ is actually wearing about his shoulders and holding, that's his winding sheet. And it took you to point it out to me that, she's resting on her pot of spices or ointment or whatever and reaching out for that winding sheet. Yeah. So all those different parts of the narrative that are built into this one moment.
And as you said, the shroud is in this chilly, strange gray blue, and it's about to fall off. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, the warmth that's coming up through her white, and her white is so fresh and so new. The brightest, most beautiful white in the painting. And of course, again, Titian puts it at the exact center of the image.
I'm struck by the way her draperies kind of billow out behind her. It really gives you the sense that she has just fallen to her knees. Yes. And, her veil has just fallen off.
But also you see the way he's applied that red colour. You can see it's applied over another white, because you can see there's white glowing through it. And this is, again, a measure of the genius of the man, how he's able to put colours on underneath, put a colour on over the top of it, but that submerged colour still comes through and gives it that extraordinary glow, that early morning glow. And I also love the little glint of white on the blade of the hoe. I think that's such an important moment within the picture. Tiny though it is, it's crucial.
It's always, for me, been such a hard moment in the Bible to understand, is telling Mary not to touch him when clearly her touch has been healing in his life. And then a couple days later, Thomas, of all irritating people, Jesus says, okay, go ahead, stick your damn finger in my wound if that makes you happy. And it's this odd thing of the person he loves and who loves him not being allowed to touch, and meanwhile, a really irritating person sticking his fingers right in Jesus' still open wounds. But Titian handles it with such tenderness and such grace, and it's not you're not allowed to touch. It's not the sign that we associate with sculpture in a museum. It is actually this other thing, which is I will be with you as an abiding presence. It will not be my body. And the look in the eye as he looks down to her and tries to explain, no, I'm going to be with you in another way. And my presence will never leave you. And that's what, as you said, Jenny, so beautifully, the incline is that I am with you, I will be with you. And that incline is meeting the incline of the tree that's growing up from her directly. And this idea that, like a tree, there will be this abiding presence that goes across generations, that is this long-term presence that will be here, that's not in the physical body. And my words are with you, my spirit is with you, my presence is with you, my love is with you. It's just my body will not be with you. And the most beautiful way to say goodbye to a loved one, there it is, this incredible tenderness. And that the stick itself goes against the root of the tree, makes you realize that, of course, he is the gardener. And this is the garden. And we are all being cultivated. And we're not just growing like weeds. There's a gardener. And that his crook goes across the root of the tree.
Creating a cross, effectively,
exactly.
as well.
Hello is so astonishing. And when you take the torque of all of the diagonals that Titian is working with, you suddenly get the cross exists in this strange, beautiful torque place.
And then you realize that tree isn't just a tree, it is the tree of knowledge.
Right.
It is the tree that ultimately becomes the cross. It is
right, and again is replaying the Garden of Eden. And it's just saying, because that's the whole point, in the place where Jesus was buried, there was a garden. Hello. It is the Garden of Eden and the new start and the new dawn in a new garden. And of course, the path to get there has been crooked. And you get this really sharply crooked, in terms of the world of diagonals of this painting, you also get that her path was a pretty jagged path. That the path to get here was jagged. But now we're on this mountaintop hillside.
And these smooth rolling hills.
And you see this distance. Suddenly you have perspective. And for the first time, you actually can see into the distance in the future.
And you have something idyllic on this side of the picture, the landscape behind Christ. And as you mentioned, the jagged physical characteristic of the landscape behind Mary Magdalene is exactly the kind of way that the original audience of this picture would have responded to it.
There's something that Venetian artists like Bellini and Titian tend to do, which I just love. If you look at the landscape, they often give the sacred figures a very interesting location within the landscape, so that right at their neck, that is where the, say, hills end. And suddenly their heads are silhouetted against the sky in a very beautiful way. And once you see that once in Titian, if you go into the Venetian galleries in particular, you'll see that done over and over, which sort of gives him a natural halo, if you will. It's very elegant.
Now, Mary Magdalene with her perfume pot, the little pot that she carries, is one of the ways that she's identified in pictures. And I think that gives us a cue for a seamless link to the final picture we're going to be looking at.
Sevoldo.
Right.